you know, tomato, tomato, do you. Alright, so today for Foundation Friday, we are going to be talking about concealer. Still in the base category, figured we're good for Foundation Friday, you know. I wanted to do this video because I don't think I've ever done a favorite concealers video. If I have, it's been years. I did like a concealer roundup review video a couple years ago, so if you want to know my thoughts on more concealers that I'm not going to be talking about today, you can definitely check out that video. I'll link it in the eye and down below. So I'm going to be sharing my top 10 concealers. Out of those 10, 7 of them are drugstore, so tons of affordable options. I also have a few high-end depending on your budget and what you're looking for, but let's just get into it. So if you're excited for this video and you find it helpful, you can give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, I upload every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific time. All right, so I'm going to start out with the one that has been a favorite for the longest time out of any of these. I think I started using this concealer about 5 years ago, maybe even 6 years ago now. This is the NARS Radiant Creamy Concealer. In my opinion, there's nothing radiant about this. It doesn't look radiant at all on my under eyes. And by the way, I'm talking about under eye concealers here. All these I'm directing towards my under eyes. I don't really spot conceal. Even when I had acne, I wasn't super big on spot concealing. I would just go in with like a full coverage foundation. But if you need a good spot concealer, I love also NARS, the Soft Matte Complete Concealer. This I don't like out of my under eyes, but this is great for spot concealing and it comes in a pot. So if you need to like dip in a brush, then that works. This one I would say is full coverage, has a satin finish. I find that whether concealer has like a satin dewy finish or a matte finish, the finish disappears when you powder your under eyes. So that doesn't really matter to me. It's more just how the concealer sits on my skin underneath powder that I care about and how it wears throughout the day. So out of all the concealers I'm going to talk about, I think this is in the top 2 as far as how it wears on me throughout the day. I have very creasy under eyes. I have wrinkles. If you have any kinds of lines under your eyes, you're probably going to crease because you're putting product into a line, so it's pretty hard to avoid unless you got like under eye filler or found some magical trick, which I've tried all of the YouTube tricks. I've tried everything. I just crease no matter what. So for me, it's about minimizing the amount of creasing. I definitely notice more creasing with certain powders and more creasing with certain concealers. So for me, this one doesn't crease as bad as a lot of other concealers out there. I love the coverage. It's unique because it doesn't feel super thick to me and it almost like sets down. I would say this one is a little bit self-setting, not to the point where I don't powder, but to the point where I think powder applies better over top because it kind of dries down. But I'll give it like a minute in between letting the concealer dry and putting on my powder, and I find that that does wonders with this concealer. So if you're down to buy a high-end concealer, this one is my favorite. I've been using the shade Light 2. I've also been using this a ton the last like 2 months. Let's move on to one of my favorite drugstore concealers that I've talked about for, I want to say, a couple years now. I find that this is one of the more unique formulas of concealer on the market. This is the Flower Beauty Light Illusion Concealer. Their lightest shade Fair matches my skin tone, so that's a downside, but I love using this one when I have no other makeup on. Like if I just want to add a little bit of concealing to my redness and then under my eyes when I have no other makeup on, I'll just put on a drop of this, blend it out. I don't set it with powder or anything, and it covers some of my darkness and helps conceal without looking like I have makeup on, which is why I love it for that. But I also love mixing this with other concealers. The unique thing about this formula is that this is a very radiant one, but there's just something so unique that it's creamy, but it's not heavy. Like it doesn't feel like a thick cream. It almost reminds me a little bit of the Milk Makeup Flex Concealer, which I will talk about in a second, obviously. This one on its own, I don't find to be full coverage. I find that it's more like medium coverage. If you let it sit on your under eyes before you blend it out for like 30 seconds to a minute, then you can get a lot more coverage. But I like using this to layer with other concealers. I'm not mentioning the KKW concealer because I don't like that one on its own, but layered with this, if you've watched my videos for a while, you know for a while that was like my go-to combo. I would put this down first and then layer the KKW concealer number 1 over top to add coverage and like lighten it up, and that concealer combo is beautiful. The KKW one I really like, but it's not like my top on its own, so that's why it's not in here. If you're someone who doesn't want a full coverage concealer, you just want something that looks very skin-like, you want maybe something that you're not going to be wearing with other foundation, then I would say go with this one. I also think this one could potentially be really good for more mature skin. It has just such a beautiful moisturizing, creamy formula without being too much. Okay, let's just go on to the Milk one since I just referenced that, but this is the Milk Makeup Flex Concealer. This is in the shade Fair. This one matches my skin tone. I would say it's pretty similar to the shade of the Flower Beauty one. So once I'm out of this, I do have a lighter one that I'm going to be using because they came out with more shades after I had this one. I'm almost out of this. You guys will be seeing this in an empties coming soon. I'm just like finishing up the bottle here. Because I test so much makeup and at all times have like 40 concealers on my desk here that I'm constantly trying and switching out, it is extremely rare that I actually go through an entire concealer. So the fact that I'm almost out of this says a lot. This one actually reminds me a lot of the Flower Beauty one as I was describing it. The only thing is I do feel like I can get more coverage out of this one. I just have to let it sit there for 30 seconds before I blend it out. If you just apply this and go in and blend, then you're gonna get like light coverage. If you let it sit there and kind of dry down and set a little bit before you blend it out, you can get full coverage with this. And again, it just has a very beautiful, creamy, moisturizing kind of feel to it. This one totally grew on me. I liked it when I first used it, but I wasn't like absolutely in love. But the more I've used this, the more I'm like, dang, that's a good concealer. I keep this in my travel bag. I keep it in my overnight bag, so I just use this all the time. If you like how the Flower Beauty one sounds, but you want a little bit more coverage, I would say go with the Milk Makeup Flex Concealer. So I have 3 concealers here that are very similar in my opinion and all kind of remind me of each other, so I don't think you need all 3 of these. I think you kind of choose one. So I'm just going to kind of group these all together and talk about them. First is, this is actually newer, released by CoverGirl like within the last few months, and this has quickly grown to the top of the concealers that I want to reach for. It's the CoverGirl True Blend Undercover in the shade L150 Porcelain. Full coverage, matte, dries down, but has a weirdly thin consistency for being so full coverage. Like, this is opaque full coverage. Out of all the ones I've talked about so far, this one definitely has the most coverage. I actually think this could be a really good spot concealer too if you do have acne or more intense like hyperpigmentation and stuff to cover up. This one is very unique in that I think if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of creasing or you don't like setting your under eyes with powder, I think this is a great option for someone like that who just wants to put on their concealer and you can just let it go if you don't want to set it, because it does dry down matte and it just has such a crazy thin formula for being so full coverage. It's kind of mind-blowing. Couple that are also very similar in that they're both full coverage and also matte and dry down. These both also have very similar giant doe foot applicators and packaging. Like, all of these have the big doe foot application, which I'm not a fan of. I don't know why we need a giant doe foot applicator, but anyways. So the e.l.f. 16-Hour Camo Concealer is very similar. Full coverage, dries down matte. The only reason why I don't reach for this one a ton is because I have the shade Fair Rose, which is actually too light for me, so I need to get a shade that matches me better. But I do like using this to add a little bit of coverage. Like, I would mix it with something like the Flower Beauty where it's too dark and I just want to lighten it a little bit. I'm pretty sure out of the 3 of these, I feel like the e.l.f. one has the best shade range. So if you can't find a shade that matches you in these 2, then I would say go with the e.l.f. one. But the third one is the L'Oreal Infallible Full Wear More Than Concealer. This is in the shade 320 Porcelain. This one is a little bit light, but I like how it has like a nice neutral undertone. I think I could go 1 shade up from this if I want something that just matches my skin better. I'm not super into the really intense highlighted look anymore. I know that was like in for a while. I kind of just want my concealer to match my foundation, and if I feel like I need to lighten it, I use powders that have pigment to them, so I can always lighten my concealer with a powder. So these 3 are all very similar, great options. Out of the 3, I think this one is like my top out of these 3, the CoverGirl, just because it's so unique how thin it is, and I feel like a lot of people will love this one. And this one I also don't get bad creasing with, I think because it sets down and kind of like dries. If you have bad creasing, a lot of people talk about like moisturizing concealers, but for me, I find that some of them that dry down are the best, because then it's setting and then you're putting the powder on top of something that's already like half set, if that makes sense. Anything that's really, really creamy and thick, like the IT Cosmetics Bye Bye Under Eye or the Tarte Creaseless Concealer, ironic, those crease so badly on me. I don't like something that's super, super dry like Tarte Shape Tape. I feel like so many concealers have come out since Tarte Shape Tape that are so much better now that one you will see is not in my top. Wow, we just knocked out 3 there. Okay. By the way, I got these earrings off of Amazon and I'm kind of obsessed with them. I feel like I'm going to want to wear them every single day. I'll link these down below, but I feel like they look so wintry and exciting, and it's kind of making me want to like go ice skate and drink hot chocolate. But instead, let's finish talking about concealer. Okay, we just did a few Drugstore, so let's do another high-end one. Actually, this is the last high-end one I'm going to mention. This is the Urban Decay Naked Skin Weightless Complete Coverage Concealer. I use the shade Fair. This is one of the few concealers that I'll wear and I'll get asked about what concealer I'm wearing, which is very odd because, again, I have like creases under my eyes, so I never really get asked about what concealer I have on, except when I'm wearing this, so I feel like there's something magical about this concealer. I love the doe foot foot applicator on here. It's like the bendy, flexible kind of one where it's like a paddle. I'm actually like half out of this one. I think I've gone through a couple of these over the years. This is another one that I've used for years now, like a long time. This one I would say is solid medium coverage, maybe like high medium coverage. Very moisturizing. It does just sit on your skin like skin without being too creamy, and it does just feel very lightweight and skin-like. As soon as I use up the Flower Beauty one, I think I actually have a backup of that already, but if I don't, I would purchase this one in the next shade up, probably just closer to my skin tone, so I could use it when I'm not wearing other makeup. So again, if you're someone who likes more natural looking skin like concealers, I feel like you would really love this. Okay, this one is what I'm wearing right now, and this has quickly become a favorite. I've been testing this one for, I want to say, about a month and a half now-ish. This is the Revolution Conceal and Hydrate Radiance Concealer. This is in the shade C2, and it's a perfect shade for me. I love the undertone. It is so creamy, so moisturizing, but full coverage. It reminds me actually a lot of the Flex concealer, but this one does have more coverage to it, but it sits the same on my skin. Like, it gives that soft, plumping kind of creamy look. These two are plumping, that's a good word. Plumping. This one has hyaluronic acid in it. It says medium/full coverage. I agree with that. I think if you let this one sit, you can get more coverage, but I feel like this one I don't need to use a ton. I'll put like a tiny bit right here, just make a tiny little triangle, and it'll spread all the way across my face. Also, forgot to mention the CoverGirl one. You literally need a dot of this. Like, if you do your normal big triangle, you're gonna have concealer all over your entire face, because a little bit of this goes a super long way. This tube is gonna last me forever because you literally need one dot or like two tiny little dots. You can get Makeup Revolution on Ulta, super affordable. This one does also have a giant doe foot applicator, so don't love that. I don't know what these rashes are from. Never ending body questions. Okay, so this is the Collab. What is this one actually called? Let me look it up. This is a No Flaws liquid concealer. I'm pretty sure Collab makes two concealers, so make sure you're getting this one, not the other one. I have the lightest shade Porcelain, which is a perfect shade match for me. It says it has a natural luminous finish with buildable medium to full coverage. I think this one is solid medium coverage. I think you can get it like high medium, but I wouldn't say this is full coverage. This one just doesn't crease badly on me. I like layering it. I like wearing it on its own. I think this is a totally underrated concealer. Smooth, and it just sits nice. It's like a good basic concealer. It's a good one. I love it. What was that word? I love it. And then last concealer here is oldie but a goodie. This is the Maybelline Instant Age Rewind. So they came out with more shades of this recently, like within the last couple years, thank God, because I think before they had like 3 shades. But this concealer is just one of those that I will forever repurchase. It is so good. I would put this in the same category as like these ones, in that there's something about it that just looks plumping and soft and moisturizing, but not too heavy. When I started YouTube, this was like the best drugstore concealer on the market, along with the Maybelline Fit Me concealer, which, by the way, I do still really love the Maybelline Fit Me concealer. That one's in my travel makeup bag. That one I think actually should be in this video. That would be like number 11 for me, but I wanted to keep it to 10 here, you know? Nice even number. But if you're just like wanting to run into CVS or Walgreens and pick up a cheap drugstore concealer, I would say either go with the Maybelline Fit Me or the Maybelline Instant Age Rewind. They also came out with more shades of the Maybelline Fit Me. That one looks very similar to me, again, to the Flex concealer. I don't really care about the sponge. Some people say it's not super sanitary. You know, tomato, do you. If it bothers you, you can take it off and just get the concealer out and apply it with a brush or your other sponge or whatever. But for me, it doesn't super bother me. It just clicks up, the product comes out, and then you like dab it on. All right, so those are all of my top 10 concealers. I'm gonna have everything linked down below in the description box. If I didn't mention any of the popular ones, it's because I don't like it enough for it to be in this video. ColourPop concealer, I despise. It looks horrible on me. It doesn't look like full coverage. It looks super dry. The Kylie concealer, horrible. Fenty concealer, horrible. Those ones just like don't work for me. So if there's any really popular ones that I haven't mentioned, there's a good chance I don't like them. They don't work for my skin. But everyone's skin is different. Products always sit differently depending on your skin. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Foundation Friday first impression will be back next week. Also, very quickly, let me tell you what's on the rest of my face in case you are wondering. For lips, I have on LA Girl Nonstop Nude Liner with Kachi Bare Naked by Wet n Wild. I don't know why I still have to look at the bottom of this. I literally use this like every day of my life. For foundation, I'm pretty sure this review will already be up, but if not, it is coming. I'm wearing the AOA Drop Foundation here, Buildable Satin Foundation. This is $2. For eyes, I use this LA Girl palette. I think it's called Born. I am not sure. There's no name on the back of here, but I've been loving this palette. I put that one all over the lid. That one's on my inner corner. For bronzer, I have on Bare Minerals Faux Tan, Jouer Highlight that was limited edition, and then ColourPop Frisky Business Blush. But I love you guys. Thanks for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.